Makima. Makima, the control devil, is the living embodiment of control and manipulation. She was one of the four horsemen and operated from the highest levels of the Japanese government, officially acting as a devil hunter while secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes. From the start, she took a special interest in Denji, not out of care, but because he was useful. She disguised herself as a kind authority figure, acting like she was giving him a second chance at life. But the truth was far darker. Her obsession wasn't with Denji as a person, but with the chainsaw devil inside him, the hero of hell who could erase devils from existence by consuming them. Her goal was to dominate him and use his power to create a world free of fear, death, war, and suffering. On the surface, it almost sounded noble, but in reality, she wasn't looking to make the world better for anyone but herself. What she actually wanted was to live in a world where she could finally have a family, not one built on love or trust, but one where she held all the power. Her devil abilities made her terrifying. She could dominate anyone she saw as beneath her. Humans, devils, fiends, even animals. Anyone under her control lost their memories of what they did while being used. She could also channel the powers of those she controlled, including dead people, and use them in battle through the chains attached to her body. That's how she built her team of hybrids. Powerful fighters like Reze, Quan Chi, and Katana Man, all completely loyal to her through force, not choice. Her control extended to spying and mobility. She used rats, birds, and other animals to keep watch across the world, and could even travel by fusing with swarms of rats. Her most brutal technique was an invisible force that could crush people from afar or destroy them through ritual sacrifice. As long as she had a name and a human offering, her target was as good as dead. Thanks to her contract with the Japanese Prime Minister, she couldn't be killed easily. Any damage done to her was transferred to random citizens across Japan. That's how she survived being shot in the head and even stood her ground against the Gun Devil. Her manipulation resulted in the deaths of Aki and Power, the two who Denji considered his family in order to break him emotionally and mentally. But in the end, Denji outsmarted her. Using Power's blood to weaken her, he managed to finish her off with a chainsaw and later consumed her remains to make sure she couldn't regenerate. Makima's brutal way of manipulating people, shattering their identities, using their loved ones as weapons, and rewriting the meaning of family into something twisted and one-sided is why she's remembered as one of the most evil characters in anime. Griffith. Griffith is the founder and the leader of the Band of the Hawk, a rising mercenary group that quickly becomes a major military force in the war-torn kingdom of Midland. Thanks to his incredible tactical mind and natural charisma, he leads his army to a string of impossible victories and eventually helps bring an end to the 100-Year War. This earns him the admiration of the people and nobility alike. As a reward, the King of Midland grants him a noble title, Viscount, and a place among the aristocracy. To everyone watching, this is a man destined for greatness. To Griffith, it's just another step towards his dream, to one day rule his own kingdom. But things begin to shift when Guts, the warrior who had become both his closest ally and the only person he ever saw as an equal, walks away from the band. Guts' departure shakes him more than anyone expects, not just emotionally but mentally. Instead of thinking things through, he acts out by sneaking into the castle and sleeps with Princess Charlotte. It's reckless, impulsive, and immediately disastrous. He's caught, thrown into the dungeon, and subjected to a year of brutal non-stop torture. By the time he's found and rescued by the Band of the Hawk, he's physically crippled, mute, and completely incapable of fighting or leading. His dream, the thing he'd sacrifice everything to chase, is seemingly out of reach, but he isn't done. Not long after his rescue, he tries to escape in a carriage and ends up crashing into a shallow river. Unable to even move properly and staring at his broken reflection in the water, he finds himself pushed past the edge. In that moment, his Crimson Beherit, the mysterious living artifact he kept with him for years, reappears. It had been lost during his imprisonment, but returns on its own, drawn back to him as if by fate. As he begins to bleed out from trying to stab himself, the Beherit activates and triggers a supernatural event known as the Eclipse. Suddenly, the Band of the Hawk is transported to a nightmarish dimension. In this realm, time and space bend, and the laws of reality don't apply. There, they meet the God Hand, a group of 4 terrifying demonic entities who reveal that Griffith has chosen to join them, on one condition. To gain ultimate power and achieve his dream, he must offer a sacrifice. Not just anyone, but the people closest to him, the people who believed in him, fought for him, and saved him. He accepts the terms and offers up the entire band of the Hawk. Also, he could be reborn as a member of the God Hand. His comrades are branded as sacrifices and are immediately hunted down by an endless swarm of apostles, grotesque demons that tear through the band like a buffet. One by one, they're brutally slaughtered and devoured in front of him. What makes it worse is that he knows exactly what he's doing. He even acknowledges in this final moment as a human that Guts was the only one who made him forget his dream. But in the end, the dream wins. He chooses ambition over humanity. His final act as a man is to whisper, "I sacrifice." And what follows is one of the most horrifying scenes in anime. As the band is massacred, Griffith, now reborn as Femto, descends upon Casca. She's paralyzed with fear and Guts is pinned down, forced to watch as he assaults her. It's pure sadism and driven not by lust, but by dominance, as a way to fully sever his ties with his old life and leave nothing behind. After the eclipse ends, only Guts and Casca survive, both branded for death and forever hunted by demons. Griffith is now a demonic entity with powers far beyond human understanding. When he reappears in the physical world after the Count summons the God Hand, he doesn't come back as a physical being, but through the incarnation ceremony, he gets a new physical body, born from the tortured body of a deformed demon child that had been following Guts and Casca. Now fully restored and more powerful than ever, he doesn't waste time. He rebuilds the Band of the Hawk, but this time with apostles instead of humans. He leads them to crush the Kushan Empire led by Ganishka, and establishes Falconia, a seemingly utopian city where humans and apostles coexist. To the outside world, he looks like a savior. He offers protection against the supernatural chaos that now floods the world after the fall of the astral and physical planes barrier. People worship him for that, but none of that erases what he did. His power continues to grow. He could bend space, nullify magical attacks, and manipulate casualty to ensure things go his way. He can't be hurt by ordinary means. Even the Dragon Slayer, a sword that can harm evil, barely touches him. His influence becomes supernatural. People instinctively trust him, feel drawn to him, even without knowing why. His very presence overwhelms logic and emotion, yet despite having everything he wanted, he still isn't finished destroying the lives of those who once loved him. He kidnaps Casca again, this time just as she begins to recover from her trauma and undoing years of healing. It's a deliberate move to remind Guts that he still has control. Griffith is considered one of the most evil characters in anime because of how coldly and methodically he carries his horrific acts out. He sacrifices his friends without remorse. He ruins lives with complete awareness of what he's doing, and he's willing to build a kingdom on the corpses of those who trusted him. Johan Liebert. Johan Liebert has the face of an angel, but operates like a walking nightmare. He and his twin sister, Anna, were born from a eugenics expert meant to create a flawless leader. Raised under twisted circumstances right from the start, his childhood was a mess, full of experiments, trauma, and a ton of identity confusion that shaped him into a cold, calculating killer. His mother was forced to choose which twin would be taken away for testing. She handed Johan over, then changed her mind and gave up his sister instead. That moment messed with him deeply. It left him with a constant feeling of abandonment and a fractured sense of self. He spent his early years isolated and observing over a creepy picture book called The Nameless Monster. When Anna escaped and returned to him, he ended up thinking that the abuse his sister went through was something he experienced himself. He held on to those false memories and let them guide everything he did after. They burned down the inn they were living in and ran away with no destination in mind. On their travel, he killed a couple who had shown him and Anna kindness. He didn't even hesitate. He kept moving through life without any real destination, just building up his ability to manipulate people. When he got temporarily separated from Anna and got sent to Kinderheim 511, an experimental orphanage meant to create perfect soldiers, he was already ahead of them. He didn't get brainwashed. He ran the place instead. He pushed the other kids into a violent breakdown while he sat back and watched everything go up in flames. Later, he and Anna were adopted by the Lieberts, but the family didn't last long. He killed them too. Then he made Anna pull the trigger on him to hide the evidence. That got him rushed to a hospital, where Dr. Kenzo Tenma saved his life. He returned the favor by killing 3 higher-ups at the hospital who had been standing in Tenma's way, and then disappeared with Anna again. Over time, he drifted between fake identities, staying with different families and learning everything he needed to manipulate people better. He left his amnesia-stricken sister in the care of the Fortners, telling them that he would return to get her for their 20th birthday. By his teens, he was running an underground money laundering network. He eventually let it fall apart just because he got bored, leaving behind another trail of chaos and dead bodies. When it was time to pick up his sister, who now goes by the name of Nina, he sent her a message requesting they meet at Heidelberg Castle, where he sent 2 corrupt cops to kill the Fortners while Nina was out. Luckily, Dr. Tenma arrives at the castle and escapes with Nina. While he continues his pursuit to retrieve Nina, he later targeted Hans-Georg Schwald, a wealthy man rumored to have a grip on Germany's economy. He worked his way into Schwald's inner circle by wiping out everyone close to him. He wanted to crash the global economy and vanish in the wreckage. When that didn't work, he aimed even higher. In the last part of his plan, he pushed an entire town towards self-destruction. He planted weapons, stirred up fear, and sat back as everything fell apart. All of it just to prove that anyone can be broken, and that there's no real meaning behind anything. Even when people tried to reach him, like Nina or Dr. Tenma, he kept pushing them to the edge. He wanted Tenma to shoot him, not for revenge, but to prove that even the most idealistic person could be corrupted. When that failed, and when Nina offered to forgive him, he shut down completely. Forgiveness was something he couldn't understand or accept. He didn't leave bodies for shock value. He destroyed people mentally to make them question everything about their lives, and leave them with nothing. And he did it all without making a scene. And this is what makes him so disturbing. By the end, he was trying to wipe out every trace of his existence. His past, his family, everything. He even posed as his sister at one point just to track down an old tape that held a piece of his history. Every move was another step towards turning himself into a ghost. After a final showdown where he tried once again to push Tenma into killing him, he got shot by the father of the boy he took as a hostage. Tenma still saved him, but after the surgery, he vanished from his hospital bed. No one knows where he went or if he survived. Johan is considered one of the most evil characters in anime, not just because of how many people he killed, but because of how he did it. He took his trauma and turned it into a weapon. He destroyed people by finding their weakness and ripping them open. And through it all, he kept that calm, unreadable face. He wasn't driven by power or revenge, he just wanted to prove that nothing matters. And that's what makes him so terrifying.
And really quick, if you enjoy these no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point videos covering all sorts of anime topics, then make sure to like this video and subscribe. But anyway.
Dio Brando. Dio Brando is the big bad of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, causing chaos from the very first part, Phantom Blood, all the way through Stardust Crusaders, and even casting a long shadow over Stone Ocean. His rise to infamy starts in 19th century England, born to a dirtbag of a dad, Dario Brando. Dio hated him, and for good reason, and ended up poisoning him to get rid of the dead weight. Before dying, Dario tipped him off to the Joestar family, and he saw his chance to upgrade his life. He moved into the Joestar mansion and immediately started working on ruining Jonathan Joestar's life, acting like a gentleman in public while bullying him behind closed doors. He even kissed Jonathan's love interest, Irina, just to humiliate both of them. It all backfired when Jonathan beat the smug out of him, and he didn't stop scheming. He burned Jonathan's dog alive and shifted to a long game strategy by pretending to be the perfect brother while planning to steal the Joestar fortune. Years later, he tried to poison Jonathan's father, George, the same way he killed his own dad. Jonathan figured it out, went digging for the antidote, and left him cornered. Backed into a wall, he made a desperate move. He used the ancient stone mask to transform into a vampire. Bullets stopped meaning anything to him, and the mask gave him power beyond human limits. He and Jonathan fought a brutal battle in the Joestar mansion, which ended with him seemingly burning to death. But nope, he survived by draining blood and crawling back to life. He later built an army of zombies by Wind Knight's Lot, brought back by monsters like Jack the Ripper, and turned the quiet countryside into a horror zone. Jonathan traded in Hammond and returned with his allies to confront him. Dio's vampire powers included freezing attacks, hypnotism, and brute strength, which gave him a major edge. Even with Hammond, taking him down was a serious challenge. Jonathan eventually managed to land a decisive blow, sending Dio's body tumbling down a cliff, only for Dio to survive by severing his head before Hammond could finish him off. Despite being just a head, he wasn't done. He hijacked Jonathan's honeymoon, turned a cruise ship into a zombie death trap, and planned to steal Jonathan's body. The ship exploded, and Jonathan died holding Dio's head, but Dio managed to steal the body anyway and sank to the ocean with it. Fast forward to 1984, and fishermen pulled up something they really shouldn't have: Dio's coffin. He killed them, of course, then spent the next few years traveling, fathering illegitimate children like Giorno Giovanna and Donatello Versus, and forming deep bonds with dangerous people like Enrico Pucci. He gained his stand, the world, through the mysterious bow and arrow, unlocking the ability to stop time. Naturally, he used it to mess with the Joestar bloodline again. In Stardust Crusaders, he waited in the shadows and let his vampire minions and stand users wear down the heroes as they made their way to his mansion in Egypt. He was all about patience and manipulation, reading books and drinking blood while the rest of the cast bled their way through his defenses. When he finally stepped into the spotlight, he took out key members of the Joestar group with ease. His time-stopping ability made him nearly untouchable. The final fight with Jotaro Kujo was brutal. Even with time stopped, he couldn't keep up with Jotaro's sheer grit and clever tactics. And when Jotaro's stand finally awakened his full potential to stop time for short periods, it was game over. It ended with Dio getting crushed, with his head shattered and his body destroyed. His remains were dumped in the desert, which ultimately disintegrated to the sunlight to make sure he never came back. But Dio's influence didn't die with him. His diary held a twisted blueprint for achieving heaven, which Pucci later followed in Stone Ocean. Pucci used Dio's bone and a reanimated fetus called the Green Baby to create a godlike stand. Even from beyond the grave, Dio's actions nearly broke reality. He's the root of so many tragedies in the JoJo universe, and whether he was human, vampire, or stand user, he stayed driven by pure ego and an endless thirst for control. And worse, his Evo echoed across generations. Bondrewd. Bondrewd, also known as the Novel, is a legendary white whistle delver with a reputation that is equal parts scientific brilliance and straight-up nightmare fuel. He's made huge breakthroughs in understanding the Abyss, but the way he got there is the problem. This guy didn't just bend the rules, he stomped on them, selling off artifacts, running illegal experiments, and using people like lab rats were all part of his routine. Even though his methods were unethical, his results were so valuable that the higher-ups just looked the other way. About 10 years ago, he set up a research base called Idle Front deep in the 5th layer of the Abyss. That alone was an insane feat, since most people don't make it back from that far down. Around the same time, he picked up a terrifying artifact called Zoaholic, which lets him spread his consciousness across multiple bodies he called the Umber Hands. This made him almost impossible to kill. One of the worst chapters in his history involves tricking a group of kids into joining his experiments. He promised them a shot at understanding the Abyss, but really, they were test subjects. Among them was Nanachi and Midi. In the end, Midi was reduced to a cursed creature, while Nanachi barely survived with a blessing. He kept using Nanachi as an assistant until they eventually escaped with Midi. Later, he adopted a girl named Prushka and raised her like a daughter, but even that ended up being part of his twisted research. When Reg, Rico, and Nanachi showed up at Idle Front, he welcomed them in, but he had already ordered Reg to be dissected. When the trio tried to escape, he tracked them down, and what followed was a brutal battle filled with clever traps and devastating attacks. Despite seemingly getting crushed and burned, he survived by jumping bodies again thanks to Zoaholic. He even processed Prushka into a cartridge, a tool to absorb the Abyss's curse, just so he could keep going. That pushed Reg and the others to their limit, and after an intense final fight, he was finally defeated. Bondrewd is considered one of the most evil characters in anime because of how calmly and consistently he sacrifices others for his goals. He never breaks a sweat while doing the unthinkable. For him, pain, loss, and ethics are just variables in an equation. Frieza. Frieza is the gold standard for anime villains. From the moment he shows up in Dragon Ball Z, he makes it very clear he's not just another powerful bad guy. He's a cosmic tyrant with a body count that spans galaxies, a massive ego, and an absolute zero regard for life outside of his own. Let's start with the fact that he wiped out planet Vegeta, home to the entire Saiyan race, just because he felt they might become a threat later. He didn't negotiate, he didn't warn them, he just pulled up, floated in space, and nuked the whole planet with one finger. That wasn't even a warm-up. On Namek, he takes evil to another level. He slaughters an entire civilization just to get his hands on the Dragon Balls. He tortures and murders Namekians, including children and elders, with no hesitation. He even kills Vegeta after making him beg for help, and laughs while doing it. And let's not forget what he does to Krillin, blowing him up in midair, which pushes Goku into becoming a Super Saiyan for the first time. Then there's the power creep. His destructive abilities are absurd. He can blow up entire planets with minimal effort. His Death Beam? One-shot kill. His Supernova attack? Say goodbye to your solar system. He doesn't just kill you, he erases everything you've ever known. And when he comes back in Resurrection F, he trains for 4 months and unlocks a new transformation called Golden Frieza. Even after dying, he still manages to cause massive destruction just out of spite. And don't let his polite speech fool you. He is cruel, manipulative, and sadistic. He enslaves whole races, uses people like pawns, and treats betrayal like a game. He kills because he enjoys it. Every fight, every war, every atrocity he commits is rooted in arrogance and control. He is an intergalactic nightmare wrapped in a smug grin. That's why he's considered one of the most evil characters in anime history, because destruction, fear, and manipulation aren't just tools to him, they're part of his personality. The Major. Montana Max, better known as the Major, is the main villain in Hellsing, and is one of the most disturbing characters in anime. He started out as a former SS officer, handpicked by Adolf Hitler for a secret mission to develop artificial vampires. But that was just the surface. What really defined him was his obsession with war. He didn't care about the cause, the politics, or even the outcome. War itself was the point. For him, chaos, destruction, and death were a source of joy, and he chased that thrill no matter the cost. He led the Millennium Project and created the Last Battalion, a Nazi vampire army with one goal: plunge the world back in the war. Even though he was technically human, he wasn't much like one. His body was more machine than flesh, kept alive through cybernetics, while his brain remained intact. He refused to become a vampire because he believed staying human, having a soul, mind, and heart, was what gave him superiority over monsters like Alucard. The Major was a manipulator. He gave passionate speeches that stirred loyalty in his troops, even though he saw them as disposable. He praised their courage, but never hesitated to punish or execute anyone who disobeyed. His charisma and twisted vision kept people following him, not because they believed in a better world, but because they were drawn to the chaos he promised. He was also highly intelligent and dangerously strategic. His attack on London was planned decades in advance and played out almost exactly how he intended. This resulted in a bloodbath that claimed thousands of lives, and he enjoyed every bit of it. He treated the whole war like a game, a performance where he could finally burn everything down on his terms, and he mocked his enemies for holding on to concepts like justice or peace. And he didn't care if he lost in the end, as long as he went out in a blaze of destruction. Even in the end, after half his body was destroyed, he kept moving through sheer willpower. He survived massive damage and clung to his ideals, until Integra shot him in the head to seal his death. The Major is considered one of the most evil characters in anime because he didn't need power, revenge, or ideology to justify his actions. He created a war just because he enjoyed it, and dragged the world into chaos simply to watch it fall apart. Muzan Kibutsuji. Muzan Kibutsuji is the Demon King, the first of his kind, and the one responsible for creating every demon in existence. He also leads the 12 Kizuki, an elite group of the strongest demons under his command. Over 1,000 years ago, during the Heian era, he was just a terminally ill man who received a mysterious experimental treatment. It didn't just save him, it transformed him into a demon. Since then, his entire purpose has been to escape death entirely and become a perfect immortal being. He's been chasing that goal by either searching for a rare flower called the Blue Spider Lily, or by turning humans into demons in the hopes that one of them would overcome the demon race's biggest weakness, which is sunlight. And spoiler, Nezuko Kamado eventually did. Once he discovered he could turn people into demons using his blood, he built an army. His blood gave demons insane abilities like regeneration, immortality, physical strength, and supernatural powers called blood demon arts. But it could also kill them instantly if their bodies couldn't handle it. But to him, demons weren't allies. They were mere tools. He saw them as expendable failures, unless they were useful. That's how he could slaughter most of the lower moons in one night just because he was disappointed in them. He was also extremely manipulative. He turned Tamayo into a demon without her consent, which caused her to kill her own family. Then he lied to her and made her think that it was her fault. He twisted Rui's idea of love and family to keep him loyal. He used Daki's emotional attachment to control her brother, and if anyone annoyed him or embarrassed him, he killed them without hesitation. That included random civilians like the drunk guy who bumped into him in an alleyway, and his friends who had done nothing to him. One of the worst things he ever did was to the Kamado family. He found them living peacefully in the mountains and saw them as potential subjects. He killed almost all of them in cold blood and turned Nezuko into a demon to test her potential. This act set off an entire chain of events in Demon Slayer and created Tanjiro's motivation to join the Demon Slayer Corps. Apart from that, he also cursed the Ubuyashiki family by dooming each generation to suffer the same illness he had before becoming a demon. He was incredibly intelligent and battle-hardened, with 5 brains and hundreds of years worth of experience for mentally linking with his creations. His regeneration is so fast that attacks seem to phase through him. He can manipulate his own flesh, change his appearance, absorb organic and inorganic matter, and release massive attacks from whip-like appendages. In his final showdown with the Demon Slayer Corps, he went full monster mode. His body transformed into something wild. His arms stretched out and were lined with mouths full of fangs. His back sprouted 9 spine-like tentacles that turned into deadly bladed whips, and he even grew 4 more whip-like weapons from each of his thighs. As a last-ditch effort to avoid death, he tried to take over Tanjiro's body and live on through him, but thanks to Tanjiro's friends and the Sunrise, that plan didn't work. His legacy is one of obsession, cruelty, and destruction. He destroyed lives for his own gain and stopped at nothing to chase his idea of perfection. In the end, all he left behind was pain, earning his spot as one of the most hated villains in anime history. All for One. All for One, real name Zen Shigaraki, was the original kingpin of evil in the world of My Hero Academia. He built a villain empire from the ground up, ran Japan's underworld for generations, and stood toe-to-toe with the symbol of peace himself, All Might. His ultimate goal is to steal One for All, the one quirk he couldn't control, and make the entire world kneel to him. He was born during the rise of quirks, and his cruelty started early. While still in the womb, he stole his mother's quirk and left his twin brother, Yoichi, powerless and sickly. Later, he shoved a quirk into Yoichi without his consent, not knowing that would kick off the creation of One for All, the only quirk that could ever challenge him. That moment sparked a bloodline war that would span generations. All for One's quirk let him steal and give quirks, which he used to manipulate others. He offered power to desperate people in exchange for loyalty, so he could turn them into disposable tools for his empire. He hoarded hundreds of stolen quirks, using them to stay young, unbeatable, and basically unkillable. He didn't just stop at manipulation. He turned Oboro Shirakumo, a hero student, into a Nomu called Kiriguri and wiped away his identity. He gave Yuga Aoyama a dangerous quirk and blackmailed him into betraying his own classmates. But his worst move was what he did to Tenko Shimura. He found the boy after the death of his family, which was something he orchestrated, and twisted him into Tomura Shigaraki, his protege and future vessel. He fed Tenko hatred, gave him the decay quirk, and set him on a path to destroy everything. Even after All Might crushed his body and left him imprisoned in Tartarus, All for One wasn't done. He pulled off a massive prison break, unleashed chaos, and continued trying to take over Shigaraki's body to keep his legacy alive. But during the final battle, Deku passed the last spark of One for All to Shigaraki, triggering the quirk's past users to rise up and help wipe All for One out for good. His body crumbled, and with it, his last shot at immortality. In the end, he didn't win. Despite all the power he collected, All for One died alone. He left behind a world scarred by his actions, manipulating lives, erasing identities, and grooming people into weapons. His evil wasn't loud, it was methodical, and that's what makes him one of anime's darkest villains. Sho Tucker. Sho Tucker, also known as the Suing Life Alchemist, is one of the most infamous characters in anime history. Not for how powerful he was, but for how deeply disturbing his actions were. Before the events of Fullmetal Alchemist, he earned attention by creating a chimera that could speak, which became a major scientific feat that secured his status as a state alchemist. What no one knew at the time was that he had used his own wife in that experiment, by merging her with an animal to force a result before his certification deadline. He lied and said she left him and their daughter Nina, then used the suffering creature he created to earn his alchemy license. The chimera only spoke once, begging to die, and starved itself soon after. 2 years later, the Elric brothers visited Tucker to use his research library, hoping to find useful information about alchemy. They bonded with his daughter Nina and their loyal dog Alexander, both unaware of what Tucker had done in the past or what he was planning next. Tucker, now under pressure to deliver another scientific breakthrough or lose his license, was growing more desperate by the day. As the deadline approached, he repeated the same atrocity. He fused Nina and Alexander together into another speaking chimera. When Edward realized what Tucker had done, he was horrified. Tucker didn't deny it. He tried to rationalize the act, insisting it was for science, and even had the nerve to suggest Elrics weren't so different from him. Edward nearly killed him on the spot. The damage was irreversible, which means that Nina couldn't be separated from the dog she was fused with. The Elrics were forced to leave and report everything. Colonel Mustang had Tucker placed under house arrest until he could be transported to Central City for trial. While waiting for the authorities, Tucker sat with the mutated Nina, muttering that nobody understood him. Then Scar arrived. Without hesitation, he killed Tucker and ended Nina's suffering soon after. Tucker's crime left a permanent scar on Edward, who carried the guilt of what happened to Nina long after. What makes Show Tucker so hated isn't just that he did something monstrous, it's that he did it twice, both times to his own family. He hid behind his title, justified his actions as scientific progress, and showed no real remorse. While the series' main villain, Father, committed far more widespread damage, it's Tucker's quiet personal betrayal that sticks with people the most. It was intimate, brutal, and completely unnecessary. And that's why Show Tucker isn't just considered evil, he's remembered as one of the most hated characters in anime history. Light Yagami. Light Yagami starts off as the golden boy. Top grades, great family, promising future, he's got everything going for him. But things take a dark turn when he picks up a notebook one day in school. This isn't your everyday journal. It's the Death Note, a book that kills anyone whose name gets written in it. And just like that, Light gets handed the power of life and death. At first, he's hesitant, but that doesn't last long. He quickly convinces himself he's the only one worthy of using the Death Note. He jumps headfirst into his self-appointed role as judge, jury, and executioner, aiming to rid the world of crime and become a god of his new world. He takes on the alias Kira and starts a mass purge of criminals. To the public, he's a mysterious savior, but behind the scenes, he is methodically crossing names off his growing list of targets. As the body count rises, a genius detective known only as L enters the picture. He figures out that Kira is operating from the Kanto region, thanks to a clever TV broadcast trap. What follows is a tense battle of strategy between two of the sharpest minds in anime. Light, now fully invested in his god complex, doesn't just go after criminals anymore. He starts killing anyone who gets in his way. That includes FBI agent Ray Pember and his fiancée Naomi, both eliminated just for getting too close. His willingness to manipulate people becomes his most dangerous weapon. When fellow Death Note user Misa Amane shows up, he immediately sees her as a pawn. She has the Shinigami eyes, allowing her to see real names just by looking at someone's face, something he can't do since he refused to trade half of his remaining lifespan for it. He pretends to be her boyfriend while using her abilities to eliminate L. He even tricks Misa's Shinigami Rim into killing L by putting Misa's life at risk, knowing Rim would sacrifice herself to save her. With L dead, Light moves into his position as the head of the task force and continues to play both sides. For a few years, things went smoothly, but Nier and Mello, L's successors, shakes things up. Light juggles both of them while recruiting new allies like Teru Mikami, who worships Kira, and Kiyomi Takato, who becomes Kira's spokesperson. Light's final move is elaborate. He tries to fake out Nier by swapping notebooks and setting up a trap, but Mikami messes it up. His slip-up lets Nier figure out the plan and switch the real notebooks with a fake. At the final meeting, when the names Mikami writes don't die, Light is exposed. He tries one last desperate move to write Nier's name, but Masuda shoots him down. With nowhere left to run, he begs Ryuk to save him, but Ryuk has already made it clear from day one that he wasn't on anyone's side. He writes Light's name in the Death Note to put an end to the story of Kira. While Light initially wants to make the world better, his obsession with control turned him into a cold-blooded killer, and that's why he stands out as one of the most evil characters in anime history.